I'd like to bring in someone that we've just brought onto the panel, which is Larry Anthony, the National Party Federal President. Thank you very much for coming in this evening, Mr. Anthony. Given that the Nationals have done pretty well this evening, does that bring to an end the efforts by Barnaby Joyce to return to the leadership?
Well, what it does indicate is that we held all our seats. There's been no change. There's been substantial swings, actually, towards those LNP or national seats, particularly those ones up in central Queensland of Dawson, Capricornia and Flynn, between 8 to 10%. So this is huge. So I think as far as Michael McCormack's leadership, I mean, he performed very well. He worked very hard. Ultimately, these decisions are up to the party room. But it's an amazing result for the party, and it's also an amazing result for the LNP. I come from northern New South Wales. I live in Queensland now, and to think that they're actually picking up seats, and like the seat of Longman, that was started to be picked up about 2 days ago, and resources were put in there. So to the team, Dave Hutchinson, Lincoln Follow, all those guys in the LNP, and also my federal director, Ben Hindmarsh, and Andrew Hurst from the Liberal Party, who were, because they were based, central headquarters were based in Queensland, I think it made a significant difference. And in Queensland, negative gearing, certainly the issues of taxation, and certainly retirees tax bit dramatically. So this is a quantum shift. The silent majority have voted. They've voted with their feet right across Australia, and particularly in our rural seats.
Larry, to go to the seats that you mentioned, Dawson, Capricornia and Flynn, you have had huge swings, but not actually any movement in your primary vote. See, in each of those cases, your primary vote has either gone backwards or only up by 1 or 1.5%. The entirety of that swing comes via One Nation or the UAP. Now, when Scott Morrison said that the Liberal Party wouldn't be preferencing towards One Nation, the National Party took a different route, and in fact the National Party enjoyed Pauline Hanson's preferences in Dawson and Flynn. Is that a strategy that's paid off for you tonight?
Well, I think it's a strategy that we realised that we didn't want to penalise those people that might want to vote for an alternative party. I mean, we made a very conscious decision in a lot of those areas that the Greens or the ALP we put last, or last was actually Fraser Anning, and I think giving people that choice, and ultimately those second preference flows, you're right, from One Nation. UAP wasn't that high actually in the end in a lot of those seats, but a lot of seats where One Nation wasn't polling high, we still had major swings. Some of the seats I was very concerned about was Cowper. I mean, not so long ago, Cowper, or even but 5 weeks ago, we could have potentially lost 5 seats for the Nats. That has come home strongly. Seats like Mallee have come home strongly. So, yes,
we've... What's brought them home? What's caused that movement in your perception over the last
Well, I
4
think
weeks?
I have no doubt that the Australian public, the vast majority that's starting to unfold now across the nation, it's a repudiation of what Bill Shorten was going to do. And also, I think a lot of credit's got to go to Scott Morrison.
Sorry to interrupt you. We have some breaking news. We're going to go to Anthony Green.
Thank you. Well, let's put out on the table here, at this stage, we think the Morrison government has been re-elected. We can't see an alternative to a Morrison government in the numbers we're seeing at the moment. We can't say whether the government will be in majority or minority. But we're certainly seeing enough numbers to say that the coalition will end up with more seats than Labor, and the only way that the Morrison government cannot win this election is if a number of the seats where they're currently ahead, they fall back on and fall behind on in pre-polls, but also that Labor would have to cobble together all of the crossbench to be in government. So at the moment, it's looking very strongly like the Morrison government will be returned. We're just not sure in what position it will be returned. Will it be majority? Will it be minority? That's where the pre-polls will determine what happens.
Thank you very much. The ABC's election analyst Anthony Green has called the 2019 election for the Coalition and the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison. Arthur Sinodinos, are you there? Are you that confident?
We're on track. We are on track. So far, so good. But, you know, ultimately it's up to Andrew Hurst and the Prime Minister to make the call. But we're doing well. I just want to see what WA does. The figures I'm getting out of Western Australia at the moment suggest Swan is tracking OK for us, which is Steve Irons' seat, and Anne Arley's seat on some admittedly not big numbers look like she's had a swing against her. So it's not clear to me that WA is going to be a wipeout for us, which would be surprising. It is consistent with the feedback we got that Labor were not using Bill's image as much in, if at all, in Western Australia. They were relying more on Mark McGowan and the feel-good factor from the state government, which is quite popular. So let's see. And as we said before, the pre-polls, well, at this stage, there'd have to be strong reasons for them to deviate from what we've seen in the primary vote so far.
It looks like there's two factors in tonight. You've got a combination of the Kill Bill strategy, which has effectively been around for 2-3 years, and then also the shy Tory syndrome. This is what perhaps Scott Morrison was talking about at the launch. He talked about the quiet Australians, urging those people to come forward and support the coalition. Just going to what you said, though, Larry, about a repudiation of Labor's strategy, do you think then that the whole election was a referendum about Bill Shorten and the Labor agenda?
Well, I think what emerged that over the campaign, and certainly over the last 2 months, the Prime Minister grew and grew. So it wasn't just a repudiation of Labor policies, but it was a very presidential campaign. And I think people made a very clear judgment between Scott Morrison and the alternative for Bill Shorten.
I want to bring in Barry Cassidy, who's in Melbourne. Barry Cassidy, you don't quite agree with Anthony Green's assessment.
No, not on that. My point is that I don't think tonight we'd be able to say that the government will be returned based on tonight's numbers because they're on 73 now. There's still 8 seats in doubt. So every seat from now on really matters in terms of whether it's going to be minority or majority. And, of course, if it's minority, you then have to negotiate your way into government. It's 73 now. Let's just hypothesise and say that doesn't change, but they get Bob Katter. They won't get Andrew Wilkie or Adam Bandt. Now, these the fate of the other independents are yet to be determined absolutely, but Helen Haines, Zali Steggall and Kerryn Phelps, they would need the support of 2 or 3 of those, and they've all said that climate change is the bottom line. So I think if they were to form government, they would certainly have to give some very strong ground on climate change.
All right, Barry, thank you very much. Larry Anthony, can I ask you, while you're still here, what role do you think that Clive Palmer's party and One Nation have played in delivering the coalition some of its strong results?
Well, I don't think One Nation played much of a role south of the border, south of Queensland. Certainly with UAP, I mean, Clive Palmer did spend a lot of money, and I think that negative campaign that he put out across the nation for the last couple of weeks did have some type of impact of driving the vote down. But by the same token, it probably made people think twice. And so I think it was a combination of factors. But there was some very good campaigning by the coalition, by the Liberal and National Party during this campaign. I was involved in the 2016 campaign. We started on a 16-seat majority and we went down to a 1-seat majority. In this case, we came behind. So I think a lot of the planets aligned. A lot of credit's got to go to the Prime Minister. Michael McCormack did a very good job as well.
Thank you for coming in to speak to us this evening.
Thank you.